Amelie Dlamini stood quietly at the gate of the ancestral home in Kwamashu, holding her sleeping twins close to her chest. She had come with a soft heart, still grieving the sudden death of her husband, Sifo. All she wanted was comfort, a place to mourn, a family to lean on. Instead, from the moment she stepped inside, she felt the air change. Sifo's mother, Mama Tandy, barely looked at her. His sister, Nalitha, watched her with cold, sharp eyes. And before Amelie could even sit down, the accusations began, whispers turning into loud words, blaming her for Sifo's death, calling her bad luck, saying she had brought darkness into their home. Amelie tried to speak, but her voice shook. She begged them to stop, to understand she had loved Sifo with her whole soul. But Mama Tandy only pointed at a corner where Amelie's clothes were already stuffed into black trash bags. Nalitha dragged them outside like throwing out rubbish. Everything was happening so fast that Amelie felt dizzy, her grief turning into shock. And then, the final blow. Mama Tandy pushed open the gate and told her, "Leave. Sifo's spirit will not rest with you here." Before Amelie could say another word, Nalitha shoved her forward. The gate slammed shut behind her. She stumbled onto the muddy ground as rain began to fall, soaking her clothes and her baby's blankets. She tightened her grip on her twins, trying to shield them as water poured from the sky. She stood there, heartbroken, humiliated, completely lost. No home, no family, no money. Just her babies, and the cold rain mixing with her tears. In that moment, Amelie felt truly abandoned. She looked back at the closed gate, realizing the people she thought were family had thrown her out like she was nothing. But she didn't know. This night, this pain, this betrayal, was the beginning of a life she never imagined. Amelie's hands were shaking as she climbed onto the late-night bus to Durban, her twins wrapped in thin blankets. She had no suitcase, no spare clothes. Only a small handbag with a few diapers, her ID, and the last 40 she had left. People on the bus stared at her wet clothes and red, swollen eyes, but she kept her head down, holding her babies close as if they were the only thing keeping her standing. The bus lights flickered as it moved through the dark roads, and Amelie stared outside the window, wondering how her life could break so suddenly. And when she reached Durban, the streets were quiet. Most shops were closed, and the city felt colder than usual. Amelie walked slowly, trying to find somewhere, anywhere safe to sit. Her feet were hurting, and the twins were starting to cry softly. Finally, she found a closed shop with a small roof over the doorway. It wasn't much, but it was at least a little shelter from the wind. She sat down on the cold ground and placed her babies on her lap, rocking them gently. Tears rolled down her face, but she covered her mouth to keep from crying out loud. She didn't want to scare them. She didn't want anyone to see how broken she was. Hours passed slowly. Streetlights buzzed above her, and every sound made her jump. At one point, she whispered to her children, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mama will fix everything. I don't know how yet, but I will." She didn't sleep. She just sat there, watching the city wake up around her. Delivery vans passed by, workers opened stores, people walked to bus stops. But she felt invisible, like a shadow sitting on the sidewalk with 2 babies and a shattered life. Just after sunrise, her phone vibrated. At first, she thought it was a wrong number. When she answered, a calm, older man introduced himself. "Good morning, Ms. Dlamini. This is Mr. Langa, the legal representative of your late grandfather, Sibusiso Kumalo." Amelie froze. Her grandfather? She barely knew him. Her father had cut her off from that side of the family years ago. Why would his lawyer call her now? "I need you to come to my office as soon as possible," he continued. "It is urgent." Her voice cracked. "Sir, I don't have transport. I'm with my babies." "I understand," he said gently. "Come when you can. But please, Amelie, don't delay. Your future depends on this." Those words stayed in her mind. Your future depends on this. She gathered her courage, wiped her face, and stood up. She smelled like rain and dust. Her babies were hungry, and she had no idea what waited for her. But something inside her, some small spark, pushed her forward. She took a taxi with the little money she had left and walked into the tall glass building where the lawyer's office was. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair messy, her heart still hurting. She expected pity, maybe even judgment. What she didn't expect was that within the next hour, her entire life, her destiny, would shift from rock bottom to unimaginable power. Amelie sat quietly in the large office, holding her twins on her lap. The room felt too clean, too shiny, too far from the street corner she had slept on just hours earlier. Her clothes were still damp, her eyes tired, but she tried to sit straight. She didn't want to look weak, not anymore. Mr. Langa, a calm man with silver hair and warm eyes, watched her gently, as if he could already see the storm she had survived. "Amelie," he began softly, folding his hands on the table, "I know today has been difficult for you, but what I'm about to tell you, it will change everything." Her heart tightened. She held her breath. He opened a thick folder and pulled out old documents, official letters, signed papers, and certificates. He turned one towards her. These are your inheritance records. Your grandfather, Mr. Sibusiso Kumalo, placed shares of his mining company under your name when you were 14 years old. Emily blinked. She thought she misheard. Shares? Me? Yes, he nodded. You were his eldest granddaughter. He wanted to protect your future. But after he passed, no one claimed the inheritance. Mr. Langa paused, watching her face carefully. We tried contacting your father several times, but he never responded. Later we discovered he blocked all communication concerning you. It felt like the room started spinning. Her father? He had cut her off from her mother's family, but she never knew he had hidden something this big. So, I never knew because he kept it from me. I'm afraid so, the lawyer said gently. And during these years, the value of your shares has increased enormously. He flipped another page and slid it towards her. A number stared back at her. A number so big she couldn't breathe. $46 million. $46 million. Her mouth fell open. No, this can't be real. It is, he assured. Every document is verified. Every signature is legal. Emily, these shares belong to you. You are the rightful heir. Her fingers touched the paper, shaking uncontrollably. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. Tears rushed down her cheeks. Not the tears of heartbreak she shed last night, but tears of disbelief, relief, and something stronger, something like hope. Her legs gave out and she collapsed into the chair, holding her twins tightly. She felt their small bodies against her heart, reminding her why she had survived every painful moment. I was sleeping on the street, she whispered. I had nothing. Mr. Langa nodded. And now you have everything your grandfather wanted you to have. He believed in you, Emily, even when others failed you. Those words shattered her completely. For years she had been called weak, cursed, unwanted. But now, sitting in this office with papers worth millions in front of her, she heard something she never thought anyone would say to her. Emily, Mr. Langa said again, voice steady and full of respect. You're the rightful heir. She closed her eyes, letting the truth sink in. She wasn't broken. She wasn't unlucky. She was powerful, and she had never even known it. Emily left the lawyer's office with trembling hands, but a new strength in her walk. It felt unreal. Just the night before, she was sitting on a cold pavement with her babies, hungry and hopeless. Today, she was holding documents worth more money than she had ever imagined. Mr. Langa stayed close beside her, making sure she didn't feel alone. Your life is changing, Emily, he told her gently. Let me help you step into it. By afternoon, he had already arranged temporary accommodation for her in Sandton, Johannesburg, one of the richest places in Africa. When the car pulled up at a tall glass building that looked like something from a movie, Emily felt her throat tighten. She had never even walked into a luxury penthouse before, let alone lived in one. The lobby alone made her blink. Golden lights, marble floors, a fountain in the center. People in elegant clothes walked past as if this was normal life. But for Emily, it felt like stepping into another universe. The elevator carried her to the high floor, and when the doors opened, a soft welcome, Ms. Dlamini from the concierge made her heart beat faster. Inside the penthouse, everything was wide, bright, and spotless. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Johannesburg shining like a sea of stars. The twins crawled on the soft carpet, laughing for the first time in days. That sound alone made Emily cry again, this time with relief. The first thing she did was buy food and warm clothes for her babies. Then, with shaky excitement, she bought herself a few new outfits. Simple things, jeans, a blazer, comfortable shoes. Yet for the first time in her life, she could choose anything without worrying about the price. Standing in front of the mirror with her babies next to her, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked tired, yes, but stronger, almost glowing. That evening, she stepped onto the balcony, the city lights painting her skin gold. Her hair moved softly in the breeze. She held the railing, looking far into the distance. Everything that had happened, the betrayal, the pain, the humiliation, rose up in her chest like fire. But instead of breaking her, it fueled her. She whispered into the night, voice steady and full of quiet power. You threw me out, now watch me rise. The next week, she attended her first board meeting as a major shareholder. At first, she walked in nervous, expecting the usual dismissive stares. But instead, everyone stood up when she entered. People who once would have ignored her suddenly greeted her with respect, calling her Ms. Dlamini with careful politeness. Men in expensive suits pulled out chairs for her. Women complimented her confidence. The room listened when she spoke, and Emily felt something shift deep inside her. This was her new world. Not because of the money, but because she finally realized her worth. The girl who was pushed out into the rain was gone. A new Emily was rising, strong, unstoppable, and impossible to ignore. Back in Kwamashu, Emily's name began spreading faster than gossip ever had. It started small, Someone saw a photo online. Another person heard a rumor from Johannesburg. But by the end of the week, the whole township was buzzing. People whispered in taxis, shouted across fences, and even gathered outside small shops, talking about the girl who had once stood crying in the rain with 2 babies, now living in a Santon penthouse. Amelie Dlamini? That quiet girl? She's rich now. Like very rich. Did you see the video? She was at a gala with big business people. Someone even printed her picture from the internet and passed it around like a celebrity poster. KwaMashu had never seen anything like it. Inside the Dlamini household, the atmosphere was heavy. Mama Tandy was washing dishes when she heard the neighbors talking outside her window. At first, she ignored them. But when someone said, "Imagine, she's worth millions now," her hands froze in the dirty water. Millions? Which Amelie? Her Amelie? Nalitha came rushing in with her phone in her hand, eyes wide like she had seen a ghost. Ma, look at this." She shoved the screen towards her mother. There was Amelie, beautiful dress, glowing skin, camera flashes all around her, walking confidently on a red carpet. Forbes Africa Young Power Gala, the newest major shareholder in Kumalo Mining, the headline. Mama Tandy grabbed the edge of the counter before her knees gave out. "Hibo, no, this can't be. That useless girl? Impossible." But it was very possible, and it was real. Nalitha's voice started shaking. "Ma, what are we going to do? We pushed her out. We threw her clothes in garbage bags. We shouted at her. She swallowed hard. And we still have her belongings here. Even Saifo's documents she could need." Mama Tandy's heart dropped. Saifo's documents. The ones they hid. The ones that could cause big trouble if Amelie ever asked for them. For the first time, she realized how deeply they had wronged her daughter-in-law. But instead of feeling guilt, panic took over. "We must go to her," she said quickly. "We must fix this. She cannot hate us." "Hate us?" Nalitha almost laughed. "Ma, after what we did, she probably never wants to see us again. But greed is powerful, especially when money suddenly appears." Together, they cleaned themselves up, planning their fake apologies. Mama Tandy practiced her sad voice in the mirror. Nalitha rehearsed lines like, "We were grieving, and we didn't mean to hurt you." They even bought cheap flowers, hoping they would make them look sincere. By the next morning, everyone in the neighborhood knew the Dlaminis were traveling to Santon to visit Amelie. Some people laughed. Others shook their heads. They all knew the truth. This wasn't love. This wasn't regret. This was panic, fear, and jealousy. Because the girl they had thrown out like a stray dog had risen higher than any of them ever dreamed. And now they wanted to crawl back into her life pretending they cared. But they had no idea. Amelie wasn't the same woman anymore. She was powerful now, and she wasn't going to fall for their act. Amelie's penthouse. The entire building felt the shift. Residents in the lobby turned their heads as the lift doors opened and Mama Tandy and Nalitha stepped out, dressed in clothes that looked too neat, too forced, like they were trying to impress someone. They carried cheap flowers, a box of dry biscuits, and fake sad faces painted on like makeup. The receptionist gave them a confused look. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Nalitha said quickly. "We are her family. She will want to see us." Their confidence lasted exactly 5 seconds, until security approached them, asking again if Amelie was expecting them. They insisted yes, even though Amelie had no idea they were here. Finally, to avoid a scene in the lobby, security escorted them to the penthouse floor, but waited outside the door. Inside, Amelie was feeding her twins when she heard the knock. When she opened the door and saw them standing there, her heart didn't race. She didn't panic. She didn't cry. She simply felt nothing, just a cold stillness. Like her emotions had finally learned to protect her. "Amelie!" Mama Tandy cried dramatically, dropping the cheap flowers at Amelie's feet. "My child, we are so sorry." "Yes," Nalitha added quickly, forcing tears that didn't match her dry eyes. "We were grieving. We didn't know what we were doing. Please forgive us." They reached out as if they wanted to hug her. Amelie didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stepped back slightly, her face unreadable, her voice calm like winter wind. "You threw me out," she said softly, "when I had nothing." Both women froze, their fake tears slowing. Amelie continued, her voice steady but sharp enough to cut through all their lies. "Now I have everything, and you still have nothing I need." The air cracked. Nalitha's mouth dropped open. Mama Tandy's eyes widened, her hands shaking. They tried to speak, to beg again, but Amelie simply lifted her hand towards security. "You can show them out." The guards stepped forward immediately. "Ma'am, please follow us." "Wait, Amelie, please," Nalitha cried, grabbing the wall. But Amelie turned away. She didn't even look at them as she walked back inside, picking up her baby as if nothing important was happening behind her. And that's when the legendary moment happened. As the guards escorted them to the elevator, a resident who had been recording everything whispered loudly, "Haudra." Security remained professional, but one guard, tall, broad, and clearly tired of their nonsense, turned to the Dlaminis and said in a firm voice, "This building is for residents and their respected guests, none of which you are." Gasps filled the hallway. Mama Tandy clutched her chest, scandalized. Nalitha covered her face, embarrassed beyond words. Cameras captured everything, their shocked faces, the walk of shame, the elevator doors closing. Within hours, the video hit social media. By evening, it went viral across South Africa. Millions watched as the same family who threw Amelie out into the rain now got thrown out of her penthouse, with the entire internet cheering for her. After the Dlamini family's embarrassing exit, Amelie thought she was finally done with them. She wanted peace. She wanted to move forward. But life had one more truth to reveal, one that reached straight into her heart. A few days later, a courier delivered a small sealed box and a letter from a community leader in KwaMashu. He explained that some of Sipho's personal belongings had quietly been handed to him by a neighbor who found them thrown in a corner of the Dlamini house. The neighbor had overheard the family saying, "We don't need to give her anything. What will she do with old papers?" Amelie held the box carefully, feeling a strange heaviness in her chest. She placed it on her dining table, took a deep breath, and slowly opened it. Inside were 3 neatly folded letters, Sipho's watch, a small photo of the two of them from their early days of dating, and a USB drive. Her hands shook so hard she had to sit down. Her husband had left these for her, and his family had hidden them. She picked up the first letter. Sipho's handwriting was familiar, warm, messy, full of life. She read the first line, and her breath caught. "My love, if you are reading this, it means life has taken a turn I prayed it never would." She pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling instantly. Every word felt like he was speaking directly into her soul. Sipho wrote about how he had argued with his family many times, defending her, begging them to treat her better. "They never saw your heart, but I did. Every day. You are kind, gentle, and you love deeply. That scares them, because they don't understand real love." He wrote about how ashamed he felt when his mother insulted her, how he planned to move out and take Amelie and the twins away from the toxic environment. He wrote about how his father had once warned him, "If you choose her, you choose poverty," but Sipho didn't care. He had been saving money secretly, hoping to build a better life for them. By the time she reached the second letter, Amelie was openly crying. In the final letter, his words cut straight through her heart. "My beautiful Amelie, you are stronger than you know. If life ever breaks you, remember, you can rise again. You always could. And if you rise, rise loudly. Rise proudly. Show them who you truly are." She clutched the letter to her chest and let herself cry fully, deeply, painfully. She cried for the love she lost, for the years they didn't get to live together, and for the truth he tried to protect her with. After a long, shaking breath, she wiped her tears and looked at the city lights outside her window. Something inside her shifted, something powerful. Sipho believed in her. He saw her strength long before she ever did. And now, she had the chance to honor him, not just with tears, but with action. Amelie stood up, holding his watch gently in her hand. "I will make your name shine," she whispered. "I will build something that carries your spirit. They tried to bury your love, but I will raise it higher than they can ever reach." That night, she made a promise, not just to herself, but to Sipho. She would create a legacy in his name, a legacy strong enough to turn their pain into power. Amelie didn't want her new life to be only about luxury. Yes, she finally had a penthouse, money in the bank, and a future filled with comfort. But every time she looked at her twins, every time she remembered the night she slept outside that closed shop, every time she thought of Sipho's letters, she knew she had to do something bigger, something that mattered, something that would make her husband proud. One morning, she sat at her dining table with a cup of rooibos tea and whispered, "Sipho, this is for you." And that was the day the Sipho Foundation was born. The foundation's mission was simple but powerful: support widows, single mothers, and women who had been abandoned or mistreated just like she had once been. Amelie poured millions into the project without hesitation. She hired a team of passionate people, built a safe housing program, created scholarships, and offered legal support to women who were too afraid or too poor to fight back. When the foundation launched publicly, the internet exploded. People were already talking about Amelie, the woman who rose from rain-soaked streets to penthouse views, the woman who faced her bullies without fear, the woman whose story felt like a real-life movie. But now, seeing her use her wealth to help others, that was the moment the world fell in love with her. Her first video went viral within hours. In it, she shared a simple message. "I know what it feels like to be thrown away, but you are not trash. You are a seed, and seeds grow in silence before they rise in power." The video hit millions of views across Africa. Comments poured in from Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and even the African diaspora in the UK and US. Women told their own stories. Men apologized for how society had treated women. Young girls called Amelie their role model. Soon, brands started reaching out: fashion houses, tech companies, banks, NGOs. They invited her to speak, to partner, to represent their values. At first, she felt shy. She had never been someone who liked attention. But every time she stepped on a stage and saw women wiping tears or nodding with pride, her confidence grew. And then came the moment that changed everything. A well-known African business magazine named her Female Empowerment Icon of the Year. She wasn't a celebrity, but she had become something much greater, a symbol. A reminder that quiet women can roar, poor women can rise, and broken women can rebuild themselves into empires. International figures began inviting her to conferences in London, Dubai, and New York. She spoke with presidents' wives, global activists, CEOs, and leaders who admired her courage. Every time someone asked her how she became so strong, she smiled gently and said, "Life taught me, pain trained me, and love guided me." Amelie's wealth no longer felt like a gift. It felt like a weapon, but not a weapon for revenge. A weapon against injustice. A weapon to protect women who had no one else. And quietly she knew. This was her true purpose. This was the legacy Saipho would have wanted. Back in Kwamashu, the Dlamini family's world began to crumble. News of Amelie's rise had spread like wildfire, and people weren't just talking, they were judging. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors, shaking their heads when they saw Mama Tandy buying groceries or Nalitha leaving the house. The shame was real, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The community that once looked up to them now scorned them openly. Mama Tandy's small business, a little grocery shop she had run for years, was the first casualty. People refused to enter. Why would we buy from someone who threw a mother into the rain? Sales plummeted, and within weeks, she had to lock the doors for good. Nalitha tried to console her mother, but even her words sounded hollow. The neighbors avoided them, and gossip followed them wherever they went. Then came the blow to Nalitha's personal life. Her fiancé, who had been blind to the family's cruelty, finally learned the full story about how they had treated Amelie. He couldn't believe how heartless they had been. One evening, after a tense conversation, he left her apartment, suitcases in hand. "I can't be part of this," he said. The doors closed behind him, leaving Nalitha alone, staring at the walls she had once decorated with dreams of a happy future. Desperation finally pushed the Dlaminis to act. They reached out to Amelie, not to apologize, not to reconcile, but to beg. Small amounts of money, even just a gesture of help. "Please, Amelie, we are struggling," Mama Tandy cried over the phone. Nalitha sent messages pleading, "We need you. Just a little help." Amelie read every word, every lie, every attempt to manipulate her. She held her twins close, feeling the weight of what they had done. Her heart didn't burn with revenge. It was calm, steady, and powerful. She typed one simple reply and pressed send. Nothing. She didn't write a lecture. She didn't threaten them. She didn't even gloat. She simply chose not to give them anything, because the universe had already spoken. And in that choice, there was more power than any money could buy. She walked away from their cries, their anger, their desperation, and returned to her penthouse, to her foundation, to her empire. Amelie's success was now their mirror. Every struggle they faced, every closed door, every whispered shame, they had brought on themselves. Karma had a strange, quiet way of working, and in this case, it didn't need her help. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't need to. She simply lived, grew, and thrived. And that alone was enough to show the Dlaminis the price of their cruelty. Amelie stood on the balcony of her new home in Durban, the warm evening sun painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. The gentle breeze carried the scent of the ocean, and her twins laughed as they ran across the manicured garden she had dreamed about for years. This was her space, her sanctuary. Every brick, every wall, every corner spoke of her journey from the rain-soaked streets to the life she had built with her own strength and determination. She wore a simple traditional dress, soft fabric brushing her arms, and her hair fell naturally over her shoulders. The twins climbed into her lap, wrapping their little arms around her neck, and she held them tightly, feeling the full weight and beauty of her life. For the first time, she felt completely at peace. No one could take this from her, no one could shame her, and no one could diminish the love and care she had poured into herself and her children. Her eyes followed the sun as it dipped slowly below the horizon, turning the water into a river of molten gold. She whispered softly, a quiet vow to herself and to the memory of Saipho. "When they threw me out, they thought it was the end. They didn't know it was the beginning of my empire." Amelie smiled as she kissed her twins on their heads, feeling the warmth of their tiny hands in her. She had risen above betrayal, poverty, and heartbreak. She had turned her grief into power, her pain into purpose, and her life into an example of resilience and grace. From that balcony, looking over her home, her city, and her life, Amelie knew she had everything she had ever needed. Wealth, respect, influence, they were hers. But more than that, she had peace. She was finally free, finally whole, and finally living her royal life on her own terms.